Welcome to the Reddit Chronicles. Today we are reading from Relationship Advice. Our first post is by Mousemoji. My 26F fiancé, 32M, left me alone in the woods. I'm sorry for the formatting or spelling. I'm typing this on the side of the road because I feel like I need quick responses on this. I have been with my fiancé for 6 years. I am 26F, he is 32M. He has always had a short temper and often picks arguments over small things, but he's so very kind every other time that I have looked past it and maybe hoped to help him chill out. He's funny and I really do love him. I do my best to avoid arguments, but sometimes it's impossible. Anyway, we had gone to a beach about 45 minutes away from home, located in a state park, which is not staffed or really patrolled well at all today, and had been drinking and swimming and having a generally good time. I remember feeling so happy and content because we hadn't argued in several days and he'd been in a good mood, etc. We began to leave and started heading home, still in good spirits. The beach was located in a remote area and neither of us had phone signal to use the GPS to leave. He began to yell and take his anger out on the steering wheel, and I instantly felt defensive, like every happy moment of the day was crumbling right there, because usually once this behavior starts, the day is ruined. I made the mistake of yelling back at him that he needed to chill out, quit making everything such a huge deal, etc. I regret this, but I just felt so overwhelmed. I just wanted the good vibes to continue, you know? We argued back and forth for a few more moments before he angrily pulled the truck to a small paved parking lot where people usually stop to rest or grill food, that kind of thing. He screamed at me to get out, and like an idiot, I did, and he left me there. I sat in the brush and cried for a few minutes before a man approached me and started asking kind of uncomfortable questions about where I was from, who I was with, where they were. I tried to be friendly in the hopes my fiancé would return soon, but the stranger started touching my hands and offered me a ride home, and it made me scared, so I lied and said I had to go meet my boyfriend at a spot nearby and walk down the road quickly. I made it about a quarter of a mile away before I sat by a little pond where some people were fishing. I had no cell phone signal to call anyone to get me, and I was scared to ask for help, so I just sat there and tried not to panic for almost 3 hours. I was alone the majority of the time, as when I arrived the only people around were already packed and leaving. From 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. I was left alone in the forest until I was able to find cell phone service after wandering for a bit and called my fiancé's mom to come get me. It is now almost 8 p.m. and I am extremely sunburnt and thirsty. I am quite pale and had been drinking all day until he left, but I finally walked far enough to get signal to call his mom for help. I haven't spoken to him yet, but he has sent several messages that I just got, seeing as I had no signal, basically just asking where I was and complaining that I had his wallet in my purse. I'm still waiting for my ride to get here, still very lost and upset. I'm still waiting for my ride to get here, still very lost and upset. I feel so hurt and betrayed and as if this was a huge overreaction on his end, but I do love him, and if it's my fault, I want to know. It was such a scary experience, which is why I feel it was too much. Edit. I wanted to say thank you to anyone who has left a comment, since there are too many to reply one at a time. So, thank you. I am currently safe and staying the night with my mom. After my fiancé and his mom finally found me after a stranger noticed me on the side of the road and drove me around the park for 15 minutes looking for them, they both started in at me that this is all my fault because I should have just refused to get out of the car to begin with. I realize that is what logic would tell you to do, but it's hard to be logical when you are upset, tipsy, and being screamed at. He also claimed that he looked for me for 2 hours before leaving to rally help in looking. His mom swears up and down he's telling the truth too, but I don't believe it. I sat in the spot he left me for at least 30 minutes before I was scared off by a stranger, and then I sat in a very visible, heavily trafficked area next to a creek that was maybe a quarter mile from where I started with no visual barriers whatsoever for another 2.5. I never saw or heard him drive by once. I remember listening closely for him because his truck is loud and I would have heard it coming. I can see now that he has put me in grave danger, maybe even more danger than I realized at the time. He has still not apologized, but I don't expect him to because he thinks he is right in this. I'm going to try and remove him from my life and spend some time alone. I will admit that in my quest for love and closeness, I have let him and other men treat me less than great just to keep them around. Thank you all again for helping me understand what a doormat I've been. In trying to force this man to love me, I have forgotten to love myself. Our next post is by Throwaway. My boyfriend, M30, is incredibly upset. I, F28, want to split expenses in half versus a percentage based on income. Finding housing has become a nightmare. My boyfriend and I, M30, F28, have been together just over a year. While I'm neutral on the necessity of living together before an engagement marriage, he believes it's an important next step, so we've started apartment hunting. My lease is up in October, and the owners are moving back in, so the timing works out. Mark currently lives in a studio-style place and spends about $1,800 on rent. I'm in a 2-bedroom plus tiny office. I'm spending $4,000. Mark has a decent job and has no problems covering bills with a little left over, but it would be a stretch for him to go up in rent too much more than what he's currently paying. I make, for context, roughly 5 times the amount Mark does. Yes, I could pay more in rent than what I do, but I'm more interested in saving and eventually leaving this area, opening my own practice, buying a home, etc. Also, for context and background, right now Mark and I split going out and our activities pretty 50-50. We take turns going out and planning dates, no real conflicts. I probably choose more expensive places and activities when I'm planning and paying, but it's not been a problem that I've been aware of. Anyway, Mark scheduled a number of apartment showings for us. He was super excited about this all, so I let him take the lead. I assumed we'd be looking at places similar in size and cost to where I'm living now, because he'd want to keep his costs similar or less than what he's spending currently. Oh no, so not the case at all. The whole first day was a series of luxury places sprawling all over some of the nicest neighborhoods in the city. Average rent on the places we saw was between $6,500 and $7,500. I didn't say anything while we were looking, but when we got back to my place that night, I asked Mark what the heck was going through his mind with those prices. He said he picked his favorite places and neighborhoods first and figured I wouldn't mind upping my costs a little. But he had some options in the $5,500 to $6,000 range too that wouldn't even be a noticeable increase in rent for me. I was super confused at this point and asked him to clarify how he expected us to be splitting rent because the math just wasn't working for me. He looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world and said because he makes 20% of what I make, he'd be contributing to 20% of the cost, of course. I told him I completely understand that some couples do percentage-based expenses, but if we're going to be sharing a place half and half, then we should be paying for it half and half. We're not married, we're not even engaged. I'm not going to be gifting rent to him. He got upset because if we chose a place that he could still afford going half and half on, my rent would be going down and his would be staying the same. I agreed, but pointed out that he'd be in a bigger place in a nicer neighborhood, so he'd be benefiting as well. Or, we can choose someplace less expensive for both of us. I also asked if he expected us to split things like utilities and other household costs with this same formula, and he said, of course. I told him if he wasn't comfortable with splitting expenses evenly, we didn't have to make the decision to move in together until much further on in our relationship, and I could just get another place on my own. Now everything I suggest or say is met with coldness and sarcasm, like I told him I'm canceling his birthday or something. I get that he's looking at this from the perspective of what I can do, but just because I can doesn't mean I am comfortable. I'd understand if I personally wanted to upgrade into something that he couldn't afford, but it's just not that important to me. Am I remarkably out of touch and unfair here? I'd rather not fight about this if there's a perspective I'm missing out there, but it just doesn't feel right to me. How do I rectify this? Our next post is by a name or something. My girlfriend, 28F, no longer finds me, 32M, attractive after a body transformation. How do we discuss this? When I turned 30, I decided to go to the gym for the first time in my life, had a bit of an early midlife crisis, I think, and wanted to get in shape before I was too old to really give it a try. When I'm old, I can look back and know I was fit and strong once upon a time kinda thing. Before this, I had what she described as a nerdy body. I had long, scruffy hair, small shoulders, and a bit of weight around my waist. I wasn't particularly macho in the traditional sense, but I was her type. In the 2 years since I started training, I have physically changed a lot. I also have a lot more muscle definition and have been intentionally changing my diet and lifestyle to lose fat. I have been successful in what I wanted to achieve. Today she mentioned how she is struggling with the changes. I no longer look anything like the person she fell in love with. I agree with her and also understand, but it puts me in a strange place. If I had gotten excessively fat and she was finding me unattractive, I would understand, as we know being overweight is not a great thing for your health. I have gone the opposite way and have gained muscle, and she says she doesn't find me attractive anymore. She approached the subject in a very kind way, and we both agreed that this is a bit of a strange one. She doesn't want me to start being unhealthy again to make her happy, but she's struggling to deal with the transformation. Many people I haven't seen in a few years fail to recognize me at first. It's strange to me too. It has been a positive transformation in an objective sense, but this is a negative consequence that I'm not sure how to approach. I love this lifestyle. I was always tired and lazy before. Now I always feel good inside, and training gives my mood a huge positive boost. Even though I knew she liked the nerdy dad bod, it never occurred to me that this change would be something she didn't like. I'm not sure the best approach to take here. We have talked about it, but didn't reach a conclusion and aren't sure where to take it next. Edit. Just to clarify, we didn't have any sort of argument, it was just a chat. She is upset that she looks at me sometimes and doesn't see my cute face anymore and instead sees someone else. The transformation has been rapid, so I get it. She said very strongly that she doesn't want me to change back, as she knows I've a much better lifestyle now, but she misses the old me and is struggling with it. I just dunno how to approach it. I don't want her to be sad, but I dunno how to fix it. Thank you for listening to the Reddit Chronicles. Follow for more content.